The next great power rivalry may not begin on land, or at sea, or even in the air. It may begin in orbit. Every missile warning system, every GPS signal, every modern army depends on satellites floating silently above Earth. Whoever controls that invisible infrastructure holds a powerful strategic advantage. Over the past 2 decades, China has moved rapidly into space, building a station in orbit, landing on the moon, launching advanced rockets. But alongside these real achievements, a mysterious name keeps appearing in aerospace discussions. Sometimes described as a future space fleet, sometimes as a strategic vision, sometimes dismissed as science fiction. So what is Nantianmen really? A secret weapons program, a concept, or a glimpse into how the next era of power might be built far above Earth, the new high ground for centuries. Global power depended on geography. Control the seas, control trade. Control the skies. Control warfare. Today, a new high ground exists, and it's 400 kilometers above us. Modern militaries rely on space for navigation, intelligence, and communication. Without satellites, precision weapons lose accuracy. Ships lose navigation. Command systems go dark. That's why major powers are investing heavily in space infrastructure. The United States created the Space Force. Russia maintains military satellite networks. India and others test anti-satellite technologies. And China has quietly built one of the world's fastest-growing space programs. This is not speculation. It is visible in launch schedules, space stations, and lunar missions. But to understand the future, we need to look beyond what exists today and into how countries imagine space power tomorrow. That's where the story of Nantianmen begins. The name originated from a Chinese aerospace science fiction concept universe developed by a cultural division affiliated with the country's aviation industry. It included imagined spacecraft, orbital carriers, and futuristic defense systems. At first glance, it appears to be pure science fiction. But strategic imagination often starts this way. During the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union produced concept designs for space stations, orbital weapons, and reusable spacecraft long before the technology existed. Many of those ideas influenced real research decades later. Nantianmen appears to serve a similar role, a vision of how space infrastructure, logistics, and mobility might evolve over the next half-century. Concept images show large orbital platforms, reusable space vehicles, and integrated space-based systems. They reflect long-term thinking about how space could support national power. In other words, Nantianmen may be less about what China has built and more about what it intends to be capable of in the future. China's real investments, reusable spacecraft, satellite networks, heavy-lift rockets, all support this long-term vision. China's real space rise while Nantianmen remains conceptual, China's real achievements in space are substantial. In 2003, China launched its first astronaut into orbit. By the early 2020s, it had built and operated the Tiangong space station, conducting regular crewed missions and scientific experiments. China has also expanded its rocket capabilities, launching satellites, lunar probes, and deep space missions. Its Beidou navigation system now provides global positioning coverage, reducing reliance on foreign systems. Reusable spacecraft tests and heavy-lift rocket development indicate long-term ambitions for sustained presence beyond Earth. These are confirmed programs, not speculation. Together, they create the foundation for continuous operations in orbit, the kind of infrastructure any future space power strategy would require. And that's why concepts like Nantianmen attract attention. They sit on top of real technological progress. Why these concepts matter: space is becoming more crowded. Satellite constellations are expanding. Commercial launches are increasing. Nations are preparing for a future where space infrastructure is essential and potentially contested. Future competition in orbit may not look like science fiction battles. Instead, it could evolve around logistics, surveillance, and resilience. The ability to launch quickly, repair satellites, maintain communications, operate across multiple orbits. These capabilities matter more than dramatic weapons platforms. By presenting futuristic concepts, aerospace industries can explore possibilities, inspire engineers, and signal long-term ambitions. The United States does this. Europe does it. China does it. Nantianmen fits into that pattern, a symbolic vision of future space capability. The global space race. The United States remains the most advanced space power, with a vast satellite network and commercial launch industry. NASA and private companies are preparing for lunar missions and deep space exploration. China is expanding its own capabilities at a steady pace. Other nations are entering the field as well. The result is not a traditional arms race, but a competition for infrastructure, access, and resilience in orbit. The next decades will likely see more space stations, lunar bases, and reusable spacecraft. The line between civilian and military space systems will continue to blur. China's long-term planning suggests it intends to be a major space power for decades to come. A rapidly expanding orbital presence over the past decade, China has dramatically increased its presence in orbit. By 2025, China had more than 1,300 satellites in space, according to US Space Force data. That represents a growth of over 600% since 2015. And more importantly, over 500 of those satellites are capable of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, tracking ships, aircraft, and military movements across the planet. From a geopolitical perspective, this matters. Record-breaking launch cadence. China is also launching rockets at an unprecedented pace. In 2025 alone, China conducted 93 orbital launches, setting a national record. Those launches placed hundreds of spacecraft into orbit in a single year. This high launch tempo matters for one key reason: scale. The United States still leads globally in total satellites, largely due to commercial constellations. But China is rapidly building the industrial capacity to launch dozens of missions every year. Since 2021, Chinese crews have maintained a continuous human presence aboard the station. More than 180 scientific experiments have already been conducted there, producing large volumes of data in microgravity research and space medicine. Tiangong is not just symbolic. It demonstrates that China can launch humans independently, sustain long-term orbital operations, maintain permanent infrastructure in space, lunar and deep space milestones. China's ambitions extend beyond Earth orbit. In 2024, the Chang'e-6 mission returned samples from the far side of the moon, the first mission in history to do so. This milestone required precision landing, autonomous sampling, lunar orbit, rendezvous, safe return to Earth. These are complex capabilities that directly support future lunar bases and deep space missions. China is also developing a new heavy-lift rocket for human lunar missions, around 2030 deep space probes, asteroid and Mars exploration systems. The long-term goal is clear: permanent presence beyond Earth's orbit. US defense assessments note that China's military integrates space systems into long-range precision warfare and intelligence gathering. Chinese satellites can track naval movements, support missile targeting, provide real-time battlefield data. The goal is not necessarily a space war fleet in the science fiction sense. Instead, the focus is on networked satellites, resilient communications, orbital awareness, strategic deterrence. Modern military power depends on space-based information, and China is investing heavily in that infrastructure.